COVID, gangbusters with ratings. Gangbusters with ratings, right? Which is why we constantly have the death toll on the side. Let's make it higher. Like, why isn't it high enough, today? Like, it would make our point better if it was higher. It's fear. Like, fear really drives numbers. Fear is the thing that keeps you tuned in. If it bleeds, it leads. Yeah.
If it bleeds, it leads?
Yep. No one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious.
Hello, beautiful beings of light. My name is Monica. Welcome back to my channel. Today's video, we're going to be talking about how a CNN technical director admitted that his network and mainstream news is fear propaganda. So I know for a lot of you out there who are truthers and awakened already, probably already know this about the news, that they're lying and trying to keep us in fear. But I still wanted to make this video for anyone who's unaware. And I actually was happy and surprised that an undercover journalist finally got someone who's pretty high up at a major news corporation to admit this blatantly. And so that's why we're going to be talking about this today. So if you've been with me for a while or watched some of my videos, you'll probably notice that this video is a little bit out of the ordinary of what I usually talk about. I have basically been trying to really make this channel uplifting and empowering through mostly just love and light messages, which I feel are very important. But I also have realized as of late that I am not doing my due diligence as a light worker if I'm not exposing the darkness in the world as well, because unfortunately we do not live in a world that is simply love and light all the time. We live in a dualistic world of light and dark, and I do feel it is my responsibility to dive into the darkness at times, to expose what it is, to transmute it, so that people can understand what's really going on in the world. And that is what helps us, I really think, expand our consciousness a lot more, is when we don't just live on one side of the dualism. So we're not just love and light all the time, but we're also not just in the darkness all the time. I think it's kind of important to be aware of both. I do try to anchor myself and focus my energy more in love and light than in diving in the darkness and finding out what's going on there. But I think it's important not to ignore and, like I said, to expose it. So I wanted to make this video today because I felt inspired after finding this video by Project Veritas here on YouTube. I actually found them through a website that I actually get my alternative news, you can call it, information, because if you don't know, I don't watch, read, or listen to any mainstream news at all, with the exception of some people have sent me, some awakened people have sent me some clips of Tucker Carlson, and I have agreed with a lot of what I've seen on those clips that they sent me, but I still don't resonate with him either, because I feel like he's so angry, which puts him in a lower vibration, which I just don't resonate with. So I don't watch him on my own. I don't go out and or check him out or anything like that. But anyways, I found this video through a website called vigilanttcitizen.com. It's amazing. I've been reading the post on there for, I don't know, like maybe a year now, and he doesn't post very often, maybe like once a month, and so I will go and check out his article. It's mostly about exposing a lot of what's going on in the with the elites, with MK Ultra programming, and just with symbolism, and with the occult, and with a lot of the satanic things that are going on within Hollywood and mainstream media and stuff, that we don't even realize it's happening until someone does the research maybe and points it out, and it becomes very obvious. So I highly recommend that website. But anyways, I read one of their articles, and it was specifically on these videos. There was 3 parts, 3 different videos that Project Veritas had done on this guy, and his name is Charlie Chester. He is a CNN technical director. And from what I understand is they had someone go undercover and pretend to go on a series of dates with him, and they recorded the conversations which pertained to the fear tactics they were doing to fearmonger people all about COVID and manipulate people to believe that it was worse than it was and to try to just keep people in fear.
It's fear. Like, fear really drives numbers. It does, you know? The happiest days in news, people, I would imagine, turn it off and then when they go with the family, they don't stay glued to it. You know? Unless there's something that's uniting them, like the moon landing or something like that. Fear is the thing that keeps you tuned in, I imagine. What's the scariest thing next? Sad news, back to back to back, doesn't do really well unless it affects them directly. COVID, gangbusters with ratings, right? Which is why we constantly have the death toll on the side, which I have a major problem with, that we're tallying how many people die every day. Because I've even looked at it and be like, let's make it higher. Like, why isn't it high enough, you know, today? Like, it would make our point better if it was higher. And I'm like, what am I rallying for? That's a problem.
Yeah.
That we're doing that, you know? Like,
well, I mean, it helps with ratings. But why don't you guys at CNN show the recovery rates on the death tolls at least?
the recovery rates. Who's had it and then recovered. Because that's not scary. That's I would imagine that's why they don't do it. Yeah.
That's what I figured.
If it bleeds, it leads. Yeah.
If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah.
I like that.
I think no one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious based on like the amount of stories that we do.
And the main reason I don't watch the news is because I can see, and this is my opinion, what I believe is that there are a group of people, you'd say the 1% of the 1% of the elites, or the Illuminati, or the cabal, or whatever you want to call it, who are pulling the strings for everything major, mainstream in the world, basically, and trying to manipulate us. And the number one reason why they're doing this is to try to keep us in fear. And the reason they want to keep us in fear is because they want to keep us controlled. It's really difficult, I could imagine, to control over 7 billion people when there's just a handful of people of that, basically, that could fit in a room that is controlling everyone by controlling their perception. And the easiest way to control people is through fear. And one of the easiest ways to brainwash people and indoctrinate them is by just repeating the same things over and over and over again until it gets drilled in your subconscious. And then you start reacting in certain ways. You become predictable because of the programming. And if you haven't already, I encourage you to research certain projects like MKUltra, because they're not conspiracy theories. They're proven. The CIA has released information on it, and I believe it's still going on today. So I had shared this post maybe a few weeks ago on my community tab here on YouTube, and I'll read it for anyone who maybe didn't see it. But it says, "Reminder, a deadly pandemic doesn't require 24/7 advertising to remind you it exists. It doesn't need marketing campaigns and endless propaganda to keep you living in fear, but psychological operations do." And speaking of psychological operations, I know I mentioned MKUltra earlier, but also there's Project, I believe it's called Mockingbird. If you haven't, I would recommend checking that out as well. So for me, I have never been able to stand having the news on. My mom would watch it sometimes when I was a kid, and I could feel my body getting tense and just wanting to leave the room so much. Like, even if I wasn't really paying full attention to what they were saying, energetically, I could feel that it was not a vibrational match to how I was feeling, because news resonates at such a low vibration. It is 99.9% negative. And I understand that there are a lot of things in life that are bad that happen, but the news will make you think that there's only bad things happening, and they will make it seem so much worse than what it actually is. A lot of times they will have crisis actors. They will just lie, and they will twist, and they will manipulate the truth, or they'll leave out certain parts of the truth. And it's really difficult to discern what's true and what's not if you just blindly go along with whatever they're saying.
Listen to the way they ask questions, because they're not actually asking questions. Any reporter on CNN, what they're actually doing is they're telling the person what to say. It's an art form in it. We've led them to talk about how we want them to talk about it. It's always like leading them in a direction before they even open their mouth. And the only people that we let on the air, for the most part, are people that have a proven track record of taking the bait. I think that there's like an art to manipulation.
I feel like I don't even have enough discernment to really pick out what's true and what's not, because I feel like they lie so much. I just won't even bother watching it at all. I am 30 years young, and I can honestly say I have never needed to watch, read, or listen to the news for anything. Literally anything. If I'm in a place where there's a lot of storms or hurricanes or tornadoes, I know I can check the weather. And I can get my news in that sense that way. But I haven't even needed to do that. And I lived in Florida for a good chunk of my life. And I'm just saying that a lot of people say they just want to be informed. They want to be informed. But what are you really being informed of? It seems like you're just being informed of lies. Lies that do not benefit you, do not help you in any sort of way. And in fact, they hinder you. And I guess back in the day, at some point, there was real journalism where people went out, had honest intentions, wanted to know the truth, and they would go and report on it. I don't know what's happened since then. I know that most of the media is owned only by six major corporations. And from my research and my beliefs are that they have people at this very, very top, like I said, the elites or the cabal, who have this agenda that or this narrative that they want to spew, and they just share it with every single network, major news network, and they all just regurgitate and parrot the exact same thing.
Hi, I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But we are concerned about the trouble and irresponsible, one-sided news stories
plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and
false news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 It's not real journalism. They're kind of puppets too. They're just being told what to say, and they say it in a very creepy, robotic manner. And the ironic thing is that they don't want you to get any of your news or anything from unsolicited sources that aren't by fact checkers, because they think that it might be damaging to people. But how do we know that these fact checkers are actually factual? How do we know that they're telling the truth and they don't have an agenda? I think it's up to every single one of us to use our own judgment, critical thinking, and discernment to feel what actually seems to be the truth, not just believe blindly what everybody who's supposedly an authority figure tells us to think and believe. Everything I research and hear, I take with a grain of salt, and I go inwards and use my own intuition to feel if that resonates to be the truth for me. Just like I would tell anyone who's watching my videos, also do your own research and go within, meditate, see if it feels true what I'm saying. Don't just believe what I'm saying. When I first had my spiritual awakening a few years ago, I was just pissed about all of the things I was finding out. I was pissed about how naive I was, that I thought that government and everybody at the top had the people at the bottom of the pyramid's best intentions at heart, and they would never do something that would intentionally hurt us. And when I found that opposite to be true, it was very painful to learn. But I couldn't ignore it after I had discovered it.
Look at the other side, how devastated they were. So were we the good guys or the bad guys? Depends on which side you were looking at it, though, you know? Yeah.
Chester is fully aware of the power that CNN has over people. His words should caution people everywhere who takes the journalism at these corporations seriously. He tells us not to take it seriously. Chester tells us explicitly how the news business works.
I think it's absolutely cruel and disgusting what people like Charlie Chester at CNN are doing. And I don't watch any of the networks. Like, I didn't even know until recently that one network, I guess, is supposed to be for Democrats and one's supposed to be for Republicans. But Fox, CNN, like any mainstream news, I just don't trust.
Yeah, I don't think CNN's any different than Fox. I think it's on the different side of it, but I think they come off as very altruistic, but I think we buried the lead a lot.
And I know that the news can be so addicting. The fear actually is what's addicting. Actually, a friend and I were talking about this. It's the cortisol that's produced from fear that can be very addicting physically to the body. And so that's why people will wake up first thing in the morning and check the news. They will check it all day long. They will listen to it in their cars. They'll watch it on TV. And it's this never-ending 24/7 buffet of fear that's served all day long, whenever you want it. And that's scary to me, that the fact that we can be so addicted to that.
Like, the fact that we have a segment called The Good Stuff, which is a feel-good thing, but it's a dedicated moment at the end to, like, almost like be the ice cream to alleviate, you know, like, everything that you've been through, like, you know, like something sweet to end it with. Because everything else is, like, doom and gloom. I mean, it's human nature. I mean, like, I find myself watching more news when there's something looming and scary.
And I try to have compassion because I've never been addicted to the news. Like I said, ever since I was little, if the news was on, I had to leave the room. Like, I'm an empath and I could feel there were negative intentions, but I didn't know exactly what they were at that time. Until much, much later in my adult years, I'm like, oh, that's why I couldn't watch or listen to the news. It just felt wrong for some reason. So I don't want to leave you completely in doom and gloom. I'm going to give you 3 alternative resources for news to look at if you want something that's not mainstream and that I feel is more truthful, even if I don't agree with every single thing they say. Like I said, take everything with a grain of salt. And but this has been the way I've gotten some of my news on certain things going on in the world without having to tune in to like CNN or Fox.
Chester seems to have lost faith in CNN's ability to do honest reporting, not just at CNN actually, but in news generally.
I mean, there's no such thing as unbiased news. It just doesn't exist. There's too many agendas. There's too many people that have jobs that need to feed their families for it to be unbiased. It's impossible. The most unbiased news is grassroots, out of people's basements with podcasts. That's the most unbiased you probably get, you know. And unfortunately, the trend is that when they could actually start making money off of it, you start to inherently destroy the thing that you love, you know, by like moving up.
Do you think CNN's done that?
Yeah. I don't think CNN's any different than Fox. I think it's on the different side of it, but I think they come off as very altruistic, but I think we buried the lead a lot.
Okay, so the first one is, I mentioned it at the beginning of this video, It is vigilanttcitizen.com. A lot of it's really dark and can be really hard pill to swallow. And I know I said I don't watch news because it's fear-based, but I don't feel like a vigilant citizen, he's trying to get people to be in fear. A lot of times we fear the unknown or what we don't understand, and he breaks everything down, I think, as to what's happening behind the scenes of what you're actually seeing, like in TV and movies, so that you can stay vigilant about what's going on and that you can have more control over your conscious awareness and what kind of content you're consuming. I've read pretty much almost all of his articles. He's been doing this for years and years and years. He's great. And I feel like he adds a little bit of humor to each of his articles, which actually helps in a way to make it not seem so intense, even though it's a pretty heavy subjects that he touches on. The second alternative news source I would say, and a lot of people I'm sure would disagree if they've seen him before, but Awaken with JP. I know he's been around forever too. I only just started watching his stuff last year, and he has this news segment that he does maybe once a week, and it's like news updates or a week in the news, and he does it from a satire comedy stance, which I find really funny, even though it's really not funny in a lot of ways. And I know a lot of people don't like him because I guess he leans more like Republican, I guess I could say, although I don't think he's claimed to be either. But I don't consider myself a Republican. I've already done like my research and I've already formed my beliefs, and a lot of them I guess just happen to align with more of the Republican side. But I think both sides, there's things I like about both sides and there's things I don't like about both sides, and I'm not going to choose a side. I'm just going to choose my own beliefs. And like I said, if it correlates more with one side, so be it. That's what it is. But anyways, I find his stuff really funny. And again, I don't agree with everything he says, but a lot of the things he says is pretty good. And then the last one I have just heard of from another YouTuber. I haven't actually gone through the articles, but there is a website called kindlynews.com. And it is all good news all the time, 24/7. So maybe if you're weaning yourself off of the fear-based propaganda news on the mainstream media, maybe look at some articles there, but then start looking at some articles on kindlynews.com and see the good side for once, and kind of dissipate that addiction to the fear-based mongering information that you're used to, and eventually maybe move to more of just the positive. And like I said before, I understand that there is darkness in the world, and this is what I'm talking about today, but I don't want to get any information about darkness from a fear-based agenda. I want to hear what I feel like is the truth. Even though every journalist, I'm sure, has their biases, I still can pick and choose what I think is best, or I feel is best for me to understand or know or believe. So it is always up to you to discern what you believe. So I'm going to wrap up this video with one last quote. And I feel like it really sums up a lot of how I feel and is a great ending to this video. So this is what I'm going to leave you with. And this quote says, "All that's required to understand that there wasn't and currently isn't a pandemic is to turn off the black rectangle spewing propaganda and instead rely on your own observations, experiences, and intuition. The pandemic only exists digitally, and the digital world isn't real." Thanks for watching, guys. I hope to see you in the next video.